You're laughing because it sounds so much bigger, but it is. It's really cool.
I love watching you think about every single word that comes out.
Anyways,
it's entertaining.
This person that I'm referring to and the thing.
This happened on Impractical Jokers where they told him you have to just keep the sentence going. Don't ever finish the sentence.
Cinetherapy podcast with Sam and Mitch. Or Dad.
Welcome to the Cinetherapy podcast by Inland Film Co. I'm Mitch Williams, joined by Sam McGhee. This is episode 4, where we'll be talking about the Sony FS7's weird issues in Premiere, why we call every film we send to a client a final cut and not a rough cut, and how we view the relationship between music and film. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Mitch. I like doing these podcasts in the morning because I get to have coffee.
I hate coffee.
My 3 favorite roasters in our town. We have Indaba, we have Vessel, and we have Evans Brothers.
Yes, we do.
But what I like about Evans Brothers is that they are a couple of ski bum brothers from Sandpoint, Idaho. And I like their branding because it's all around skiing. It's all around Schweitzer Mountain.
The Northwest.
It's the Northwest, and it just makes me happy. I don't snowboard enough anymore, and so when I drink Evans Brothers, I think of the mountain.
We're filming for Indaba Coffee Roasters.
If you're watching on our YouTube
love
channel,
people, love coffee.
My wallpaper has been Indaba's statement: "Love people, love coffee." That mission runs true through their entire business, and I really, really love that mission. I don't know of any other coffee shop that has a mission like that.
They're about building communities and neighborhoods, and that's pretty cool.
The film that we just finished,
yes,
for a totally different project, construction, building. Is it subsidized housing?
It is, yeah. Subsidized housing.
Same mantra though. For
families to kind of bring them back together that were homeless or going through rough times, give them a chance at learning things.
And what's the little slogan that we came up with for the end of that film?
We updated it to building communities
for all walks of life.
For all walks of life, because this construction company builds big buildings and that have penthouse suites for affluent people, but they also build these awesome cottages and, housing that helps people get a second chance in life. It's pretty neat.
I think it's neat that a lot of our clients, or a lot of the work that we do, client work that we do, tends to line up in terms of values. The stories are all in the same realm.
Totally. Speaking of that project, I was inspired this morning in a conversation with you about that project for a topic today.
Yeah.
When people hire us, they usually say something along the lines, send us the rough cut first.
The rough cut.
Yeah, send us the rough cut, because they're assuming they're going to chop it up. And I always like to say, well, we're going to send you the final cut. And knowing that they're going to have some edits, but if I say this is the rough cut, that's basically saying, well, we're not sure where to go with it. And we're open for your guys' feedback.
Right.
Well, the truth is they hired us because we're the experts. And so when I say this is the final cut, if they have a couple that places value on it, that we believe that this is the best.
It totally does.
Video, where if we say it's the rough cut, then they're going to turn around and think, oh, okay, well, what do we need to do to make it better, or than not the rough cut?
Right.
And they're going to try to make themselves the experts when they're not.
It's a mental shift.
It's a mental shift. So,
story brand.
Yeah, story. Well, the truth is, yesterday you sent what you thought to be a final cut that was actually a rough cut on accident. Can you explain why? How we have a camera that doesn't play nice, or Premiere doesn't play nice with the camera.
We film with the Sony FS7, and there was a notorious, strange occurrence that none of the forums have been able to figure out. If you film with the full sensor all the way edge to edge, it's 4096 pixels across. That's full 4K, not UHD 3820. If you film all the way edge to edge on that sensor, and then you put that in in Premiere, Adobe Premiere, and then you render whatever clip, doesn't matter, any of the clips, edge to edge, render it, there's a little line of pixels. I don't know if they're dead pixels, they're like, they flicker.
They flicker, they're
and
green.
It's all the way on the right. They're green and they flicker, and it's the strangest thing, and it happens only in Premiere. Doesn't happen in Final Cut. And so we have to bump up the scale. Either we finish editing, and then we nest the whole edit, and we put it on a different timeline for export, and we bump everything up 1 pixel so that we get rid of that little thing on the right side. Or we go through and we bump up the scale by 1 pixel on every single shot. And that's a little more tedious. But if we do that, if you do it while you're editing, if you do it as you go, you make sure that, you don't have to bother with that other step of nesting it and doing whatever. You can just make sure that the edit you're looking at is the one you can export. And I tossed, for our dailies, a lot of times what we do with our dailies is we try to figure out how we're going to put all our B-roll together to make a story. And one of our dailies that I edited, I used a bunch of the B-roll that's supposed to go in this film to try to figure out how it was all going to look. And then I took all of that edit from that daily and threw it on this final edit for the client, assuming that everything was ship shape, everything was color graded the way I wanted it, everything was scaled up. I checked the first one, scaled up 1 pixel, and then I thought, no, they're all good. I already did my job. So I moved on. I didn't check the rest of them. And sure enough, the final cut that we sent to the client last night had, on all those clips that I didn't check, that line of dead whatever flickering green pixels. And I just cringed as I looked at it.
Luckily, it's not downloadable. It was just for a preview.
Just a preview. It's okay. We'll fix it. Hey, they might not even notice it, because on our TV here, when we display projects here at the studio for preview, we couldn't even see edge to edge over there. It covered them up. It covered them up.
That is why I quit trying to go clip by clip,
because you can't.
I checked it out of my mind that I'm not even gonna bump clips while I'm editing. I'm always going to take that extra step, because that extra step of dragging the nested sequence into another sequence, that's just part of my checklist.
It's not worth it.
No, it's easy. It's easy to drag that.
That's true. I should have done that.
But no, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is, if you're looking at buying an FS7, I don't know about the FS5, but if you're looking at buying an FS7,
and I don't know about the FS7 Mark II
or the Mark II, yeah, we don't know about.
I don't know if that does it either.
Yeah, so we have the OG.
Anybody who listens that uses the FS7, I know of at least one person that does listen to this that uses an FS7. Zach Trinka.
He just bought a sweet zoom lens.
I don't even want to talk about those. They are sweet. They are expensive. I don't want to talk about them. Negative target fixation. He has something cool that we don't have, and now I want it. But does anybody else have that problem? Are we the only ones? I have read forums, and I know that it's a problem, and I know that Sony and Adobe don't have an answer.
Zach probably knows. He's probably like, oh, yeah, guys, it's just like, it's this easy.
Exactly.
Just like putting a LUT on your small HD.
I post Instagram stories all the time on my own personal Instagram.
Yeah.
about my MacBook Pro crashing.
Yeah.
If I have Premiere open and I'm doing anything else, if I open up a Finder window, if I open up a Chrome window, if I do anything other than just do whatever Premiere's doing, my computer will shut down and give me the Chinese symbols of death. And it happens multiple times a day. I've tried to fix the problem, but I always post it on my Instagram story when it happens, and I'm trying to find unique, funny ways to post about it, and I always get a bunch of responses. People will message me and say, you need to start using a PC, or there's a major problem with your computer. You need to just get a new computer. You need to use Final Cut is my favorite one. But Zach Trinka wrote and said, quote, "And on our next episode, we'll talk about how Sam threw his computer out the window," which I have not done yet.
You were pretty close to it.
But I was pretty close to it. But I thought my Instagram story was pretty funny because I added a song
Rage Against the Machine.
From Rage Against the Machine.
We had another listener write us to say they were grateful we talked about negative target fixation. It was gentleman by the name of, Bo Kester. He's got Round One Productions.
Bo Kester.
I don't know how much we want to dive into it again this week, but I do believe it will be kind of a common theme that we might run into with other people.
Definitely.
Because this world that we live in, it's so easy to have your eyes on other people. What are other people doing? What do other people have?
Mm-hmm.
There was always the keeping up with the Joneses was a common phrase. I don't know how far that dates back to, but probably 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
Every decade, I'll bet.
I love the Highwaymen. You have a song where they sing about keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
That was my plug for traditional country music.
In the life of just being an adult with kids in my neighborhood, the potential negative target fixation actually has to do with golf, sort of. And I mentioned Tiger Woods last week. Land on the fairway. Mm-hmm. He doesn't think don't land in the trap. Anyways, in my neighborhood, if you don't have a golf cart, strangest thing, if you don't have a golf cart, you're not.
You haven't made it.
Yeah, you haven't kept up with the Joneses. The golf cart community here is crazy.
You don't have a golf cart.
I don't. No, but is it my fault that I want my kid to ride a bike?
Yes, it is your fault.
No. That I don't want him to think we're going to take the golf cart to the park.
Get on your bike.
We're going to actually walk, or we're going to ride our bikes. Anyways.
Oh my gosh.
That's a little tangent.
See, you live in the golf cart neighborhood. I live just over the hill in the UTV tractor neighborhood.
Yeah, or horseback.
Exactly, or horseback.
Yeah.
People are riding their horses down the street to drop their kids at the bus stop.
We got a complaint from a friend first week that made it sound small time that we were talking about a restaurant like Zona Blanca, a small town. You just made it small town.
I made it even smaller.
Yeah, by saying you have horseback. I guess, New York, they have people are riding around on horseback.
Yeah.
Cops.
But nobody's riding around on tractors.
No, it's true. And I'm talking about Manhattan, not, upstate. I'm sure there's plenty of people on horses.
Let's ask Zach.
You guys are getting the Netflix sent on DVD still.
We are getting Netflix sent on DVDs, man.
Yeah.
My dad still complains about that.
What?
He complains that the movie that he wanted wasn't on Netflix DVD. It wasn't available, so he couldn't order it. And it was like the biggest talk of the whole week that movie wasn't on Netflix DVD order. And he has a regular occurring order.
He still does the DVDs.
He has a queue, man. He does. And I don't even remember what movie he was talking about because it baffled me that he still does the DVDs.
I know that the DVDs are a big part of Netflix's business, even though they try to get away from it. But it's because of people. Your dad by no means lives in a rural community.
No.
So I don't understand.
He
why
lives in the
doesn't-
same community
Yeah.
you do. And he doesn't have a golf cart either.
But a lot of people, even near us, up near, the mountains, they don't have,
Yeah.
high-speed internet or internet at all. So, and then you go up to Alaska. Those people there's still a Blockbuster up in
No, that
Alaska.
one's gone.
What?
That one is gone.
No.
There were all these cool news stories about it, and it was very recently that one shut down, and there's only one left in Oregon. And the reason the one in Oregon is still there is because they are running it kind of as a curation. It's their business is curating films. They have what is it? It's not Portland. It's some other town where all the people that still go to that Blockbuster are going there because the manager is curating films and suggesting films for people to watch. And it's the reason that it still exists is for totally different reasons than it being a rural community.
Was this like a Vice episode?
Yes, it was.
Because I watched
obviously.
the Vice episode a year ago on the one in Alaska. So
I know. Are we open for a suggestion?
what do you mean?
That music topic?
I like it. I wrote that.
When are we going to have Tyson Matzenbacher on here?
Tyson Matzenbacher.
That's a good transition because we're going to talk about music.
Yeah, true.
We had a guy, Grayson Turner, looks like he's close to us, actually. He wrote us a while ago on Instagram, but recently he wrote and asked that we talk about music for video, which is a little vague.
Vague, but we can dive into it as much as we want.
My mind goes to how we pick music, where we're getting our music, what artists we like right now on those platforms. Maybe how we edit. Do we pick the music first and then edit to the music? Do we edit and then add music later? Because there's a big thought that you edit, like even especially action scenes. I was watching something the other day about editing the action scene and all the choreography first and then trying to add music. And a lot of, like for Atomic Blonde, there were some action fight scenes where they didn't have music at all because the choreography and the editing felt like music.
Yeah.
So they just left it silent.
It was epic. You felt the stress. So I'll talk on how I edit with music.
Yes.
I started editing in high school, which was on Final Cut. Started first iMovie and then Final Cut. And
You have to specify which Final Cut, though.
7.
Because Final Cut 7 puts you in a very cool place.
Yeah.
All the cool people were using Final Cut 7, and it's the Final Cut 7 people that got pissed about Final Cut 10. I started with Final Cut 10.
It's like a different generation. So I started in high school and got heavier into it in college with a buddy of mine, Justin Ferris. Him and I were really interested in film. We made little short films and whatnot. They're awful, but someday people will dive in and
I was blown away by them.
no, still
I got to watch them, and I thought they were fascinating.
yeah, they're still it's not my proudest work. That being said, though, it was always that question: do you bring music in first and edit to music, or edit without? I found that on a couple shorts or videos, films, whatever, I would edit first without music, and then I would bring music in. And there were a few that I would edit with music first. I think I already said that. Blah, 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 blah. I today, fast forward to 2018, Mitch.
With Premiere Pro 19.
Yes, Premiere Pro.
2019.
or CC. Is it the same?
Premiere Pro CC 2019.
2019. I like to edit without music first because I find that music traps me into like I have to edit this to the music. And I don't like that. I like to come up with an order of events, how I want a story to be pieced together, and then bring in some music and see what feels right. And then you can shape your cuts shorter or longer in different areas of your cut without music to make it fit that music.
Sounds a little Ryan Conley-esque.
Yeah?
Yeah, because he suggested editing without music and then adding it. The other step that he takes is adding music, making your cut, and then changing the music.
Yeah.
So that you're forced to see your edit in a totally different light.
Which I do with dailies too, to make myself realize how important music is.
Yeah. Or how unimportant it is. Sometimes.
You're correct. Yeah. And oftentimes that's totally true. We cut a daily for Children's Miracle Network while we were filming for them and Sacred Heart Children's Hospital, a daily of the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Where siblings of kids who are sick and in the hospital, where they go hang out with a volunteer who tries to bring up their spirits. Because what happens is those siblings, they're at the hospital all day and it's just sad.
Yeah.
And this clubhouse is a distraction, so to speak. I edited a daily. It was a minute long. It ended up making the final cut of the final film that we aired at that event.
Not the rough cut.
Yeah, not the rough cut. Yep. And I put the full thing together without music, and I put on some music and tried to see how music sounded for that, and I hated it. I was like, this is dumb. Why do we need music? And I cut the music track, and it was just, you got a minute inside look at what it felt like to be in that room with the volunteer and with the young girl who was at the hospital because her brother was there.
That moment, that whole minute long scene felt so raw and authentic, I think is the word. I was going to say, I had a bunch of other words that I was thinking about using, but I think authentic is the one that I'm looking for. Cause that lady that she volunteered or she paid, but it was just one interaction between this lady and an actual sibling of somebody who was at the hospital, and they're making slime.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you just watch this little, I'll use my favorite word. You watch this little cinematic moment of you get a sense of what it really feels like to be either the kid or the lady trying to interact with the kid. And it was layered with emotions. Mm-hmm. And I do think that music would have changed that entirely. And I think that moment made people feel uncomfortable because you didn't really know, like a lot of people didn't really know what to do with it, because you come to that event and it's like, it was paired with surgeons, a heart surgeon, and it was paired with these like kids in the hospital with tubes, and it was paired with all these really powerful images. And then there was this moment where this lady's making slime with a little girl, and people were like, oh. But the people who actually sat and let themselves experience what was going on, it was really powerful, because you see that this whole side of the hospital has to happen. Like, they put a lot of thought into this. And for that little girl, years later, how's she going to be impacted by when her sibling was in the hospital and she was sitting with this lady, and the volunteer made slime with her and made it all better? That could affect her years from now. So I had a lot of emotion tied up in that edit that you made.
Yeah.
And I really wanted it to make it into the final cut because it made me so uncomfortable. I had to keep watching. It made me happy. It made me sad. It made me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
It was slime making fart noises. It was fun.
For sure.
Basically, I'm saying go watch it. It's a daily. Go find it. It's somewhere in there.
It's one of the first 20 or something, I think. It's the second sequence in the Through Our Lens documentary short series, which can be found on the Children's Miracle Network page on our website, inland.film. A little plug.
Shameless plug. It's daily reel number 20.
20. It was 20. I kind of thought it had a
020
number. Yeah, that was. We use Artlist often. If people haven't noticed that we tag them a lot.
Yeah.
And if you're not using their service, it's a pretty solid service. And
it is. And there's a lot of really good artists on there. A lot of really good music artists. I heard about Artlist from Cinematography Database like a year or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just haven't stopped using it since.
Yeah.
It keeps growing. Well, I think for you and I, we're both musicians first. I like to say that. Because my first love is music. I wanted to be a musician, and then cameras ended up being way cooler. Or at least I could wrap my head around starting a business with cameras. But for me, choosing music is a big deal. I don't know. I agree with what you just said about editing and then adding music, because I don't want music to get in the way. I don't want music to trap me in an edit. I think what you said about the trapping, something that I heard Ryan Conley say that totally made me that shifted. I think that was a shift in my editing. I used to have to put music down first and then edit everything.
A lot of people do.
I had to do it. I couldn't do it any other way. And Ryan Conley said that, and it made me start. It forced me to think outside the realm of just picking song first. And I think that editing side by side with you, seeing you do that, has forced me to stay outside that box. And I think it's for the better, because now I'm finding the pace of the edit, finding the sequence, finding how clips fit together, and not being not being stuck inside whatever song it is that we picked. And at the same time, like the film we were talking about at the beginning of this, where we were joking about the final cut and the rough cut. I made a daily with the B-roll, and I had a song picked, and we talked about Artlist. We've also been trying the Music Bed service, also the subscription. But we can only use that for our own dailies. We can't use it for client work
unless we want to spend
the money on it.
And
but I found a song on Music Bed that I really, really, really liked for that little sequence. But then when I put that sequence in the client film, that song that I had picked had lyrics, and it had a big beat, and I needed something different for the edit. And then I had to force myself out of, I think, again, Ryan Conley has said this before, where he got himself, he doesn't ever want to get attached to the temporary music. And I feel like the song I had picked for the daily was temporary music, and it was hard for me to get my mind.
Yeah, temp music, which is temporary. But
and so I had to pick something different, and I had to get my mind out of the realm of the song I had picked as a temporary.
That was the conversation he had with his composer for Ballistic. And what happens with directors is they get attached to music when they hear it. And so then when they send it to a composer, either the composer feels influenced by that music, which might be wrong, or they throw it out the window, they don't even listen to it, and then they make their own, and the director's like, something's wrong. It's because they've gotten so addicted to, or not addicted, but they've gotten so accustomed to hearing one thing.
They're biased.
They become biased towards it. I wanted to comment on a couple things you said. You said you used to cut to music, and you've since kind of turned away from that. I have found that a lot of people cut to music because they've made music videos for their buddies or for themselves, and so they get used to cutting. And what I'll say about that
wedding
is,
films
for sure
feel like music videos.
Yeah. And what I think is, in the wedding film world, there's definitely story that matters, and oftentimes it's driven by the vows or whatever. But what I find is that if you attach yourself to music, you're focused on cutting your final cut is around the music. It's not around the story. To me, I care to get in there and write the story first, cut the story first, and then the music is there to elevate that story. And the story is not there to elevate whatever the music track you chose. And I think that there's some confusion that can happen. Yeah. And if you cut around the music, you're trying to make your story make that music sound better. But if you cut your story first, the music that you add is a layer to help elevate that story.
One of my favorite music videos ever is Chris Stapleton, Fire Away.
Oh my gosh.
And that doesn't feel like a music video. It feels like it was a film. Like the music was written for the film, but the film was made to go with the music. We were talking about the bias, the story bias that the composer might have. Christopher Nolan with Interstellar.
Mm-hmm.
Who did the music for Interstellar?
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer.
Duh.
Thank you. I'm not ashamed of that. I can't remember names. Christopher Nolan told Hans Zimmer that he had, holy cow,
wow.
What are they doing in the OBGYN?
That was the loudest noise we've heard in the OB. That might have been just a baby just popped out, hit the wall.
I just threw up a little in my mouth. Gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Christopher Nolan told Hans Zimmer that he had a film that he wanted to make about a father-son relationship, an epic journey that a father and a son go on. And that's all he told Hans Zimmer. And so Hans Zimmer wrote the whole, at least the first ideas that he had for the soundtrack to Interstellar was just written around that idea. And then when he got all this music back, Christopher Nolan was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I wanted. And then he finally gave the script to Hans Zimmer, and he was like, this is a story about a father and a daughter, and it's a crazy space movie, and this is not at all what you told me. He's like, exactly. I didn't want you to know. I wanted you to get my idea, the essence of my idea. I didn't want you to have the bias of the space father-daughter thing. I wanted you to think father-son epic.
And he chose the church organ for that because it was the most complex instrument. And I don't know if he chose that before or after he knew it was a space film.
I think it was after.
Yeah. But what I love about Hans Zimmer is that in his interview about all the movies that he's taken on to write the score for.
Was that Wired or was that Vanity Fair?
I think it might have been Wired. One of those. He's a skeptic about every film he gets asked to do. He's like, this story sucks. It doesn't make any sense. It's not emotional. And then he's every single film he goes, but then I started looking into it more and I realized that this is more of a story about a son walking through life without a father or whatever, in like terms of Lion King. I don't know if that's exactly what he said.
Yeah, no, Lion King, he started to become conflicted about like his own relationship with his dad and what it would be like to not have his dad. And man, that was such a powerful interview.
I wanted to touch vaguely. I don't like to speak about things in a vague way, but I don't believe we're allowed to talk about this right now, but it's more of a plug. I do want to say that there are some pretty cool things happening in the film community in general, but in our town, in our city, Spokane. And
You are being so vague. I don't even know what you're talking about.
And there's someone that reached out to me via email this morning. Do you know what I'm talking about now?
I know what you're talking about now.
Okay. And we're all kind of connected in some way that with some pretty cool stuff that's going to happen on an international scale here soon. You're laughing because it sounds so much bigger, but it is. It's really cool.
I love watching you think about every single word that comes out.
Anyways,
it's entertaining.
This person that I'm referring to and the thing.
This happened on Impractical Jokers where they told him you have to just keep the sentence going. Don't ever finish the sentence.
Yeah. Anyways, we're going to have somebody on our podcast in probably a month or two, and we'll discuss this once everything is concrete. But I'm excited. I'm excited because it's a cool project, a cool thing.
Yes, it is a cool thing. What we should be talking about is what is going on over there. Do you hear people we can hear people talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are they yelling?
I don't know.
They don't give birth over there.
Well, you never know. Something could happen like that. A lot of people have asked us about our setup, and I'm going to write a little post, put it online.
You're writing an article.
Yeah, it's not really an article. It'll just be
It's a blog post.
Simple post of this is what we have. And
with the equipment, the amount of equipment we have, it could just be a tweet.
Yeah, it could. But I'd like to have links.
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
Yeah. It's pretty minimal. And we've started traveling with it because I hope Tim's listening to this. Dane forgot his podcast gear last week.
We film while one of our clients is doing a podcast. And we provided the podcast gear last week.
Because we had it.
It was the first time we took this setup on the road.
Yeah. And then, we've had multiple people asking, for specs of what we do. If you watch the video on YouTube,
you can see it.
You probably can't see this Pro Line
Do we
sticker.
want people to see the Pro Line sticker?
Yeah. This is a really cheap piece of crap microphone stand. It was $25. I mean, for two of them, that's $50, which isn't cheap, but it's the cheapest that you can.
It's not inexpensive, but it's cheap.
Yeah, it's garbage. These things, and Sam makes sure to keep giving me the Pro Line one that's faded because this is the worst one.
I need to make sure you have the bad one. I'm gonna, for YouTube, I'm going to leave those in.
Those are claps to mark my coughs. Gosh, it's just I don't know if it's still allergies or if I have a little bug, but I've been waking up with congestion in my chest and it's not good. I woke up this morning to my toddler coming in our room at 4:20 in the morning and not ever really falling back asleep because he was rolling around and trying to get comfortable and talking to himself and then to us and pushing his feet into my head, pushing his feet down like the comforter. So the comforter would then go off my back and I don't sleep with a shirt on and the fan is going and it's blowing cold air on my back and I want to be in my warm, comfortable. And then multiple times I would pull my comforter back up saying, or I won't pull my comforter back up and he'd be like, but Dad, I want it down. And I'm like, anyways. So then finally around 5:50, Sydney decides to get up with him and I couldn't fall back asleep. So I just rolled over and checked Twitter.
We watched Incredibles 2 last night, and there's a whole scene with the dad and Jack where he won't go to sleep.
It's so good.
And every time he gets him to sleep, he turns around, and there he is at the couch again.
That is James. I have stories, man, of walking out of my room to like go get water.
Yep.
And walking around and looking in the corner of my eye, and in the hallway is my son standing there. Just straight horror face. Just scary, man.
We've not had that happen, but we have a Nest Cam for a baby monitor, and we have on the occasion been like 4 a.m. and we're like, is he awake in there? And we'll pull up our phone and we'll look, and he's standing looking at the camera. And you're like, what is this? Oh my gosh. It's like a horror film.
It is.
It's real.
I will say, I want to sandwich that with, I freaking love my son. He's the best. Like, I wouldn't want any other kid to be my son. Like, I think he's freaking awesome. He's hilarious. He's intelligent. He's highly active and coordinated and whatnot. I love him.
And at 4 a.m. when he's standing there,
that's when I
in the dark,
throwing him out the window like you want to do with your MacBook Pro.
Oh my gosh.
I'm teasing. Obviously.
He was.
But I have to sandwich that with I'm teasing, because in this world,
you can't say stuff
you can't
like
say
that.
stuff like that because people might take you seriously and want to call.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It's all done. It's all over. It's all over now.
Well,
we were talking about the gear. Or did you just want to say there will be an article?
Yeah. But you did mention gear, so we might as well just end it. We've talked about some piece of gear or equipment.
Yeah, let's talk about, because we normally go to like what piece of equipment are we excited about?
And then filmmakers
recently?
Or films, if we want.
Talk about this gear, because I mean, I've joked that it could be a tweet, but that's just because we like to keep it pretty minimal.
This microphone that I'm speaking into, and the microphone that Sam is speaking into across from me, is the Shure SM7B.
It's the only microphone you can ever use for a podcast.
It would be the only microphone I would want to use. I mean, I did my research, and I also noticed that most of the best podcasts, they're using this microphone, and you got to ask yourself why. And then when I bought this and we recorded our first voiceovers, we were blown away. So, anyways, the Shure SM7B, the Shure SM7, the first version of this microphone. So they've only made one iteration since the 70s or 80s. This is the microphone that Michael Jackson chose to record Thriller on.
And is that the only research you did on this microphone?
That's
you read
the only
that?
research. It's the only research you need to.
That's the microphone I'm going to get.
No, I've actually noticed that more musical artists, more musicians are actually recording on this microphone now in the studio than I think most have. And so I've been seeing it show up in little behind the scenes of studio recordings.
So it's this, and then we got a USB.
It's the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, I think. It might be the 4i4. I think it's, Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. And it has 2 channels, XLR channels. And that's what we use. If I were to do it again, I would get the 8i. It's the 18i8. For whatever reason, the 18i8. That is the one I would get if we were to do it again, because it has 4 XLR channels instead of 2. And we have plans to bring guests onto this podcast. And I am going to want the 4 channels. So the chance of us getting that are probably pretty high, and probably getting another one of these microphones because we have an AKG cardioid and a hypercardioid that we could use, but to keep sound consistent, I'd probably want to use this. Anyways, they're not cheap.
Nope.
They're not your blue popsicle, whatever that.
They're not
called.
a blue popsicle. That's true. But you hear the difference. You definitely hear the difference.
Yeah.
And I think for our, if we need something good to end this on, is that the one thing that we're constantly learning new things and updating the way that we do things and upgrading our gear, the one thing that we keep focusing on, we're constantly learning in everything, but I think audio is where we are making the most updates and the most strides in our learning. I think right now, well, the film that we talked about in the very beginning, I started filming that project 2 years ago. It's a film about construction. It's a film about this new building, and so we started filming when they started building, before they started building 2 years ago, and that's the interviews that we did 2 years ago. That's when I was no longer using a lav, and we were starting to use a boom pole overhead with a shotgun microphone, and we were still using a lav just in case, because using a boom pole with a shotgun was new for us, and we were deciding if it was worth it to set up a boom pole every time and whatever, and just, I mean, that's 2 years ago that we switched from that microphone to that microphone. And then a couple years later, we realized, man, a hypercardioid overhead for indoor stuff, that's even better. And then, man, if we make sure we do this and this and this, we get better quality audio. And so I think even just recording on these Shure microphones for our podcast, it's audio is just the one thing that we keep making. Like the camera, I guess we can continue to learn how to better use this camera, but the sensors are all going to be very much the same. You can learn how to get a good image out of this stuff, but audio is one thing that we keep learning new things, and we keep upgrading the gear, and we keep updating the way that we record it.
Yeah. I mean, I since the day you and I started working together, I remember that's been a driver of mine, is that natural sound is huge.
Yeah.
And then just clean audio.
Yeah.
And these, we've done a number of voiceovers for some car ads and some, other med spa ads and whatnot.
And for the recruitment films.
Yeah, recruitment films as well. Recruitment films and
in the commercial industries that we've been making films for, we've done a lot of voiceovers for those.
Yeah, and this microphone has been a lifesaver. And I that's where I say the money is worth it. I'm all about being minimal and frugal where it counts, but also spending where it counts, like where you're gonna have a return on investment. We so much to the fact that we're not advertising this. We don't want to advertise this, but that one of the large corporate clients that we have reached out to us to record their phone system recordings, the prompts, because of the quality of audio that they've noticed in our films. Yeah,
which is funny, because right after we record the audio for the phone systems on this, we have to run it through some converter to make it G117 or something, and then it sounds like we recorded it on a phone. But regardless, it was the best. It's the best sounding phone system anyone's ever going to have. Ever.
Any films you're watching?
Yes. And you just watched it too.
Yeah.
We recently watched 8th Grade from Bo Burnham, and it is incredible. It's uncomfortable because it's so real. I think what's ironic is that I had my phone out for a lot of the film. I don't know why, but every time I'd look down and I'd be either on Twitter or Instagram or something, I'd look up and there would be, oh my gosh, one of the things that they would do is you'd see shots of like a montage of phone usage, scrolling, and then they would, in a very opaque second layer, you'd see the girl's eyes, a shot of the girl's eyes, because she's just not blinking and taking in all this content and scrolling. And it made me, it was a really, 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 really good artistic visual way of representing what's happening to us as human beings as we're taking in all this. We're just scrolling and taking in all this content that doesn't, like, it's not doing anything for us.
Mm-hmm.
8th Grade was amazing, and I recommend everybody watch it because Bo Burnham just kicked butt with this production, and it just blows my mind that he directed this, because I think his comedy's hilarious. But I've watched a number of different breakdowns of, like, evaluations of, or maybe even just essays written about Bo Burnham's comedy over the years, the evolution of his comedy and his cynicism, and the articles usually, or the breakdowns usually, try to show that he's pointing to something greater. And I think for A24 to have Bo Burnham do this film about 8th grade, and the fact that he used 8th graders,
Mm-hmm.
9th graders, recently graduated 8th graders, real people,
Yeah.
from a real school that were not actors. I mean, he did an amazing job, and I think it's this emotional film is part of his journey as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of his comedy, his cynical comedy, pointing to something greater. This was just an amazing piece of art, and I mean, immediately when it finished, I got on, ironically, Twitter and tweeted about it.
Yeah.
Had to.
Sydney and I watched it, I think probably only a few days after you, or maybe a week. I don't know. And I agree. It was a great movie. Any film that can make you feel something, anything,
Yeah.
it did its job.
Yeah.
And then you continue to ask yourself questions, why did I feel that way? And it is ironic, sort of, that we're talking about this film on this podcast, on this installment, or this episode, because we were talked about earlier, the question we got from Grayson Turner of music in video, or music in film. And yesterday you and I were talking about 8th grade, and one of the things I loved about the film so much was his choice in music, that he chose music from almost 2 decades ago. It seemed like it was 15 to 20 years. And it, as a now parent in my early 30s, I looked back that far. Every time the music came on, sail away, sail away, sail away, or something, any song, it was always from around the time that I was in my at least teens, maybe not 8th grade. And it forced me to go back in time of what it was like to be a teenager.
Yeah.
And maybe we didn't have the pressure of social media, but you still had that social pressure at school of, potentially being something in people's eyes and whatnot. And I appreciated that, because
it like connected the dots of, like, what is happening in middle school for middle schoolers now. It connected the dots for what was happening when you were there.
Mm-hmm.
The music transported
you.
The music made the story real.
He could have chosen modern music from 2017, 2018, and he didn't. And
that would have been easy.
It would have been really easy, and it would have been something that 8th graders would have associated with today. But he needed to choose music that brought me his target audience most likely. I would say so. That people watching 8th Grade are not my parents.
No.
They're going to be that people between 25 and 35, maybe 25 and 40. I don't know. And so it was to pull us back into that. And it would be interesting, actually, to see if he could remake the movie, a different version, a different cut of music of when my dad was a teen. You know, like pull out Styx and White Snake and Queen or something like that. I know it's being funny. Yeah. Or it would be interesting to see if that would have the same effect. I don't know. It'd be pretty cool.
That is powerful. And I remember you saying that yesterday. I think that made me... That continued the conversation and continued to make this movie even... Continued to build my appreciation for what he accomplished with that. Spanning multiple generations, tying the story together for people, making us feel right. And one of the other things that I really, really, really liked, I'm like kicking things down here. This is not good. One of the other things that I really, really liked about the music is that he would build a song and build the volume of the song, and then at a really powerful moment of the film, he would cut the music. And it would just be the silence or the room noise. And then you were left with this uncomfortable feeling of like, it's like he used the music to bring you mentally into the scene, and then he took the music away and forced you to deal with what was happening.
It's the now that you're saying that, it's us scrolling, being distracted, and the music is kind of like it's keeping your mind on the music. We're keeping our minds on the screen. When you're forced to be pulled away from that screen and deal with everything going around you, it's uncomfortable. Well, I think we're probably
that's
good for today, and we can wrap this one up. Next week, we invite our first guest on the show, composer and DP Kevin Graham. So be sure to tune in as we dive deeper into the world of music and films with someone who has admirable experience in both. And that's a wrap.